Erling Haaland has skyrocketed through football's ranks to become recognized as one of the best players in the world. His killer instinct and physical presence has allowed him to dominate whatever league he has been playing in, breaking records week in, week out. How did the skinny kid from Norway become the best striker in football? Erling was born into a very successful sporting family. His mother is a former heptathlete champion for Norway, and more notably, his father, Alf Ing, is an ex-Premier League player. In fact, when Erling was born, his father was playing for Leeds at the time, so he spent his first few years living in England. His family eventually moved back to Norway in 2003, when Alf announced his retirement from football due to ongoing injury problems. Infamously, Alf suffered a very serious injury from a reckless challenge by Roy Keane. It is no surprise that his parents got him into sport from a very young age, signing for his local football academy at just age 5. Growing up, he would often be too good to play against children his own age, therefore playing a lot against older, taller players. Unlike today, this meant he was often at a significant disadvantage physically. His coaches have said this is why he has developed such a good understanding of the game, as he couldn't rely on physical attributes. After working his way through his local ranks, he would go on to sign for Molde in 2017, who was managed at the time by fellow Norwegian striker Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Despite scoring on his debut for Molde, he had a relatively slow first season, only managing to score 4 goals across 20 games. However, if there were any doubts about his goal-scoring ability, he quickly put that to bed the following season, scoring 4 goals in 21 minutes against league leaders Brann. He finished the season with 12 goals in the league, which was catching the attention of some top European clubs, including Leeds United, his dad's former team. Eventually, though, he would go on to sign for Red Bull Salzburg in January 2019 due to Erling being excited by their project. Unlike his previous clubs, Haaland wasn't the main man up top, as Salzburg had Mogens de Boer up front, who had scored 37 goals in 48 games, making him impossible to drop. Haaland's slow integration meant he only managed a handful of appearances in the second half of the season before he went away on international duty to the Under-20 World Cup. At this tournament, Haaland announced himself to all clubs across Europe. He managed to score a record-breaking 9 goals in a 12-0 win against Honduras as he won the competition's Golden Boot. By the time he returned back to Salzburg, de Boer had left for Sevilla, and Jesse Marsch was now the manager at the club. After seeing Erling's performance on the international stage, Jesse rewarded him by making him the club's first-choice striker. This decision immediately paid off, as Haaland went on to score 11 goals in the opening 6 league games of the season and received his first call-up to the senior squad for Norway. Later on in the year, he would go on to make his Champions League debut, and with that, he created more history. His first appearance came against Genk, where he scored a hat-trick in a 6-2 win, announcing his arrival to European football in emphatic style. He would continue this hot streak in the group, scoring in his first 5 consecutive games, becoming the only teenager to do so, and only the 5th player ever, scoring goals against the likes of Napoli and Liverpool. By the time the January window came around, Haaland had 28 goals in 22 games for Salzburg, scoring 5 hat-tricks. This red-hot form in front of goal made it impossible for Salzburg to keep him much longer, and were powerless when Borussia Dortmund came in and activated his release clause, beating the likes of Manchester United and Leipzig to his signature. Dortmund promised Haaland guaranteed game time, and his father has said this was crucial in allowing him to become the player he is today. Standing at 6'4" with blistering pace and strength, Haaland took the Bundesliga by storm. He wasted no time in doing so. After initially starting on the bench due to fitness concerns, Dortmund were trailing 3-1 to Augsburg and turned to the teenager to help make a difference on his debut for the club. Dortmund went on to win the match 5-3, as Haaland scored a hat-trick in just 22 minutes of football. He would then come off the bench in his next game, scoring a further 2 goals as Dortmund went on to beat Cologne. This meant Haaland had scored 5 goals in his first 2 games, despite only being on the pitch for less than an hour across the 2 games, winning him Bundesliga Player of the Month. After an impressive start, he could continue his Champions League campaign in the knockout rounds with Dortmund. He scored 2 goals as Dortmund went on to beat PSG, taking his tally in the competition up to 10 goals. Unfortunately, however, PSG would go on to knock them out in the second leg after a 2-0 victory. His goal scoring couldn't be stopped in Germany, as he ended his first season with Dortmund on 16 goals across his first 18 games. As expected in Haaland's first full season at Dortmund, his individual brilliance continued to shine through. His scoring form continued as he scored 27 goals in the Bundesliga in only 28 matches, which led to him being voted the player of the season. Erling also couldn't stop firing in Europe. He became the fastest player ever to reach the 15 and 20 goal landmark in the competition. His 10 goals was enough to see him win the tournament's top goal scorer and consequently named the forward of the season. All in all, he ended the year with 41 goals in 41 games across all competitions. More importantly, 2 of those goals were scored in the DFB Pokal as Dortmund went on to beat Leipzig, securing Haaland his first major trophy for the club. Despite starting the following season with a hat-trick in the cup, Haaland would be plagued with injuries, causing him to be out of action for around 100 days across the entire campaign. This didn't stop Haaland though when he did manage to get on the pitch, as he scored 29 goals across all competitions in just 30 games, also becoming the fastest player in Bundesliga history to reach 50 goals. Although his game time was limited, Pep Guardiola had already seen enough of Erling, and Manchester City would activate his release clause as he signed for the club in July 2022, following his father's footsteps. Upon arriving to the Premier League in spite of his proven record-scoring goals, there was a handful of people having their doubts about him.
Erling Haaland will not live up to the expectation. If he scores 15, it would be a really good season for him. Yeah.
Unfortunately for Rory, since joining Man City, Haaland has become undoubtedly the best striker in the world. He made a record-breaking start to life in Manchester after scoring a brace on his debut at West Ham. He would then go on to score a hat-trick in his first 3 consecutive home matches, becoming the first player to ever achieve this feat in the Premier League. This included a hat-trick against local rivals Manchester United. Erling continued scoring week in week out, and by the halfway stage in the season, he had already scored 25 goals in only 19 games, which is enough to win the Golden Boot in most seasons. His goals didn't dry up in Europe either. He scored another brace on his debut in the competition for City, and then a week later he would haunt his former club Borussia Dortmund by scoring goal of the tournament. By the end of his first full season in England, Erling had broken the Premier League goal-scoring record. He managed 36 goals across 35 games in the competition. This was enough to see him win the FWA Footballer of the Year by the biggest ever margin. It wasn't just individual success for Haaland. He was part of only the second English team to ever win the treble. His mountain of goals in the Premier League was enough for Manchester City to catch up to Arsenal and win their 3rd title on the bounce. They walked past Manchester United to lift the FA Cup, but more importantly, they won their first Champions League in the club's history, as Haaland won his 2nd Golden Boot with 12 goals, historically scoring 5 in one match against Leipzig. Somehow, after scoring 52 goals across all competitions and having the greatest ever season by a player both individually and collectively in England, Haaland didn't go on to win the Ballon d'Or. Haaland has achieved this greatness at only age 23. With many more successful years ahead of him under Pep, one day he will be able to lift the Ballon d'Or he deserves.